Back to the bench grinder conversion. Decided to start out today with a little work on the pulleys. I would like to mount these in my lathe and face the surfaces off to true them up, to get rid of any wobble. But I don't. The lathe that I currently have that's operational doesn't have a top slide or a compound miter slide, so I don't have a way of doing this inside angle properly. So I may have to come back to this. It's probably just getting too nitpicky to do that, but it's so easy while the pulleys are off. But we may come back to that. So here's something that's important to notice. Hidden under the belts in the pulleys, where you can't see it, are these set screws, which look like a stupid cut-off bolt with a line hacksawed in it. And the reason why I accuse it of being a cut-off bolt, you can look at that surface and see it's just rounded off by the shaft. It's, you know, the set screw is supposed to be harder than the shaft you're tightening it down against. Here's what a proper set screw looks like. This has a cup on the point, and there's a hope it comes into focus here. Has a cup on the point, and this helps when if it ever moves or jiggles around, prevents it from having a large diameter leverage to unwind it and make it come loose. But look at the difference in these two fasteners. Just terrible what came stock in the machine. And of course, someone may say, well, if it isn't broke, don't fix it. But part of putting things together, part of doing things properly is putting them together properly. These two screws cost me 59 cents. So if something's worth doing, it's worth doing all the way right. Here's what the packages look like. 6mm diameter by 6mm long screw. And these pulleys are kind of rough. There's sharp edges on them. I've already straightened that one out. But I'm going to take a file to these and get rid of the edges. And like I said, maybe someday I'll come back and touch those up on the lathe. I'm going to thread the factory platen for the new platen that I made. And I'm going to use a drill press to do it. I've got the 832 bit mounted. I've removed the belts from my drill press so I can turn the mandrel freely. The material the platen is made out of is rather thin. If I try to turn these in by hand, it'd be easy to wiggle the tap handle and break a thread and end up with something that I can't tighten very effectively. So I'm going to do this by hand here with the press. People don't think of a drill press as a threading tool, but it certainly is useful as a threading tool if you have one. I have a smaller drill press I could do this on too, but this will be convenient. You want to break the turn the tap a little bit and then break the chip out. You want to be careful not to break the tap, especially if you're threading into something solid that can be quite hard to get out. You're certainly not going to drill a tap out. There we go. One hole, and I'll do the rest. And the final hole. Support back in place. Sweet. Now one more thing I'm going to do is I'm going to deburr the tops of all these holes. From drilling or perhaps threading, there's a little burr up on the surface. This I can do holding the part by hand. Put the belt back on the drill press. Got it running at a low speed. I don't want to take a lot of material. Don't want to lose any threads to that. A slight lead in on a hole like this will help a thread to start. If you look inside of a nut, there's a slight cone shape in the nut before the threads. And that's so that the threads don't begin suddenly, but they begin slowly. If you look inside of a nut, you'll understand what I'm talking about. Just going to lightly touch these off on the inside. Try to make about 2 turns on the hole. One important thing to do frequently in your shop is to stop to put away tools. I'm going to put away these things that are here that I don't think I'm going to need in the next few operations. If you don't do this, you end up surrounded with all of your mess. I spend at least half the time of any video putting tools away, or any project that is. Probably half of that time should be spent doing pickup cleanup. Now I try to pick up a few extra things each time. Cleaning these bearing caps for reassembly, I see we have a spot here where the shaft has been rubbing quite mightily. And I checked my bearing assembly and the shaft is sticking through where it's going to touch the housing. So I'm going to slip these bearings, and I've got this tool here because it's a couple of flat pieces of metal that'll keep the hooks from my jaws from digging into my new rubber seal. I'm just using this tool the same way I used it to remove the bearings, to pull that out flush. And oh, how I would love to have a lathe set up where I could turn these out a billet. It looks so nice. Okay, so that ought to work better. Hopefully it won't touch. That'll save us a little bit of drag. Alright, I've discovered I can't do that. I pushed the bearing back on. The problem is there has to be a set distance between these bearings. And when I moved this out, then I had some play here. And I can't move this bearing any farther that way without machining that shoulder off. So I think the real problem is the shaft is a little too proud here. It needs to be cut off. There's another way of dealing with this. The bearing cap for this side has a clearance hole for the shaft to come through. I could simply drill this plate to have the same hole as this one. If I had 2 of these plates, I'd just mount this one on this side. And that would solve my drag problem. But since I don't, I'm going to drill this bearing cup here. Alright, I've chosen my course of action. The bearing is in the cap, and I've got this bit that fits the bearing very nicely. I'm just going to use the bearing, it's one of my old bearings itself, as a guide to center the drill bit. Now these bearings do not really go all the way into the cap. So, you know, this is, when you buy these cheaply made, poor quality tools, they're really not finished. They're the appearance of a nice tool, but they really aren't a nice tool. Nothing's hand fitted, nothing's nice. Now, if you bought one of these that was top quality, it'd probably be $250 and not $69. But understand, you are getting what you pay for. It's not just about price. There's a big difference between this and a nicer one. And it takes a lot of work to bring this up to still not the quality of the nicer one. Who knows, maybe I'll make some bearing caps someday. But that's the procedure I'm going to use. That's the bit that fits the bearing. This is the bit that fits the hole of the other one that has presumably the proper clearance. So we'll go drill those. Here we go. By putting oil on the bit, it constantly feeds into the cut. And the larger the bit, the slower you want to go. I've got this press on its lowest speed. This might have been a good idea to drill a starter hole. Yeah, we're getting a cut in there. The center of this bit's not going to cut too well. We might be getting a good cut now. Notice I have a piece of wood in this vise. These machinist vise, if you run across them, these things are very expensive if you need to buy a new one. I don't remember where I got this one, but I picked it up used somewhere. Knowing me, I didn't pay a whole lot for it. But after shopping for another one on eBay, I can see they're very costly. Add a little bit of oil to that. If I see another one of a different size somewhere, I'm certainly not going to pass it up. The price is right. There we go. I think we're getting some wood up now. Change drill bits. I've been watching Craigslist and other places looking for more machine tools, and I'm thinking I want to keep upgrading my stuff. If you pay attention and snap up good deals when you see them, you'd be surprised how you can upgrade your equipment. I wouldn't mind replacing this press with a real machine shop drill press. I mean, a 20 or 30-year-old real machine shop drill press would probably be a lot better than this one, even though this one works really, really well. It served me well. But I can always, if I find another one, I can always upgrade. Let me remove the bearing. There we go. Once we got the cut started, we were in good shape. Oh yeah, good. I can clean up the burr with this. Just checking, it's just big enough. There. Smooth on both sides now. So we shouldn't have the shaft touching this or grinding against the end of it now. Nice little blueprint job. Well, I can't help but notice it. It just seems like this depression is not in the middle of these holes. I notice I have to run the tracking way off to one extreme where the knob's really tight. So if I did machine up some new ones of these, I would get this in the center of these holes on both sides. I could probably improve that little annoyance quite a bit. There's always things you can make better.